announcements. First of all, hello, welcome everyone. My name is Carrie Slade. I'm the Assistant Academic Director of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Institute, and I'm also an assistant professor teaching in the areas of innovation intelligence, social entrepreneurship, and business in emerging markets. So I'm the host for this Innovation Leader Speaker Series, and I'm really thrilled to welcome Dave today. So I'm going to make a couple of announcements, and then I'll turn it over to him. All right, so I'm assuming you can see my screen. So again, welcome everyone. I'm really excited for today's presentation because it's super on point with what we all need to be doing, which is thinking about how big companies can become more entrepreneurial and disrupt themselves rather than waiting around and having someone else disrupt them and then going out of business or needing to do layoffs or something like that. So we're here to talk about entrepreneurship and big business, disrupting yourself from within. This series, the Innovation Leader Speaker Series, is part of our commitment to innovation in all aspects of education. And one of the ways we do that is through our Innovation Management and Entrepreneurship Master's degree. And Dave actually is an alum of this program, so it's really exciting to have him come back and talk about maybe what he's learned in the program and how he applies that in daily life at work. So again, we have a master's. It's a one-year master's. It's 10 classes. You can do it, of course, part-time up to 5 years. And we also have certificates, which are only 3 classes, and you get a certificate in entrepreneurship, innovation strategy, or healthcare innovation. Of course, you can feel free to contact me with any questions about anything about the program. Here's some examples of our classes. So this is actually a program where people are really excited to go to class and do the readings. I got a couple of students on here, so hopefully they can attest to that. Classes like Creativity Unleashed or Global Innovation Strategy are just really exciting and dynamic. And then we also had one of our alums on Shark Tank this spring. So if you want to check out Jared Cannon doing his pitch on Shark Tank, he actually did get a deal with 2 sharks. So we're really excited for him. Again, to see the success that our alums are having and have them come back and share it with us is really rewarding. All right, so thank you to our sponsors today, the IEI, of course, and the Fox School of Business, the Center for Student Professional Development, Technically Philly, the Innovation Research Interchange, and the Product Development and Management Association in Philadelphia. So special welcome to any members of these organizations that are joining us today. And if you want to support us, get involved, you can pull out your phone right now and scan that QR code, or I'll put this link in the chat. We're always looking for reviewers for our competitions because we like to give teams feedback on their submissions, and other ways to get involved, like mentorship, are also available. So we'd love to have you if you're interested in that. All right, so let me give a brief introduction to David before turning it over to him. Again, I'm really excited and grateful that he was willing to join us because I know he's super busy. As we can see by the clocks on the wall there, he's operating in multiple time zones. So there's a lot going on for him. So thank you, David. So he is currently the senior claims manager of service operations at Cigna, which is one of the largest health insurance companies in the country. And he manages a team of over 200 team members in 3 countries and a couple different states. He got his undergraduate degree from George Washington University in International Relations and Affairs. And then he has a master's degree in innovation management and entrepreneurship, as I said, from Temple University. So David, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to stop sharing now and turn it over to you. If I can help you in any way, if there's anything you need, don't hesitate to let me know. I'm here to help you. So thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure. Can you see my presentation?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. It's always weird getting yourself introduced. I find that very, very weird, but you did a great job. Giving a little bit on my background. I appreciate that. We're going to talk a little bit about disruption from within, how to think like an entrepreneur, and really what I'm going to focus on today is less about maybe how a big business can help people be entrepreneurs, but more about how you as individuals can be an entrepreneur within your workplace, and how Cigna really has helped enable and empower folks to do that. So just a really super fast agenda. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more, a little bit about Cigna, super high level. We're going to talk about what an entrepreneur is, just to kind of get ourselves grounded on a definition so we can talk through and discuss from the same place. I'm going to talk about something I've developed called the Entrepreneur's ecosystem, which is really about where an intrapreneur acts and works and how those forces impact them. We're going to do a really, really quick case study on how I've applied this in my job, and then talk a little bit about how you all can take this back and apply it in your day-to-day as well. And I'm super excited to just take questions and talk about whatever's on your mind and whatever I can help with. So hop right into it. So a little bit about me professionally. Did a great job there kind of walking through a little bit about what I've done. I think the one thing that I'm responsible for, if I could sum it up in one sentence today, is when we notice big problems that are happening in terms of customer experience, it's my job to get in, design, plan, and execute a project to fix those problems. So customer experience is really what I do at the heart of everything. So I always have to be kind of in tune to what customers are complaining about, what they're talking about, asking about, what's not working. And I love getting my hands dirty, rolling up my sleeves, digging into processes, and trying to fix those things to help our customers have a better experience. Prior roles, I also led our quality department for a while. I managed claims teams directly for a while. I got a great opportunity to be a project manager for a new acquisition in the Middle East. I got to work in Dubai for a little while, so a lot of exciting stuff that I've done at Cigna. So I really graduated college and went to work for Cigna back in 2009. I've been with them for 12 years. Never intended to work for them that long, but the way that I see it, if I continue to learn, I'll continue to stay. And they've really challenged me and continue to push me harder, which I enjoy, and it's kind of what keeps me going. Personally, I have two beautiful daughters, Selma Joy, who is almost 3, and Aaliyah Bell, who's turning 1 next month. So we had Aaliyah kind of in the middle of shutdown COVID year, and my wife had to be on bed rest like all by herself for like 4 weeks. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. Made us stronger as a family for sure, as I'm sure a lot of you have these trials and tribulations of the last year but we're excited that things are starting to get back to normal. I'm passionate personally about home improvement, so young family, and I bought an old house, so I got a lot of work to do, and I've been learning a ton on YouTube. I watched constant videos about fixing things, and it's gotten me into woodworking and building furniture. My latest project is a little banquette bench in my kitchen for a breakfast nook, so some things that I like to do personally. And recently I moved from the Philly area. I was living in Media, Pennsylvania, and working down in Wilmington, and I moved out here to Los Angeles to be closer to my kids' grandparents. So I still work East Coast hours. It's kind of an agreement I had with my boss, so I'm up bright and early at 5 in the morning, but I'm done at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So that's positive as well. Super high level about Cigna, just to give you a general sense. So we are a health services company. We primarily offer insurance products, but we do offer a large array of health benefit products to help people manage and take care of their personal health and well-being. $154 billion in total revenue, $140 adjusted, number 13 on the Fortune 500 as of 2019 listing, 70,000 employees worldwide, 170 million customers and patients. So big, right? I mean, that's what you should take away from those numbers. Very large, with a lot of reach. So as a health benefits company, there's a lot of capabilities and resources that we can leverage to help our customers get a better shake in their healthcare. Me specifically, the sales capability in more than 30 countries and jurisdictions is applicable. I work for what's called Cigna Global Health, which is a niche of Cigna, and we offer a product that covers people anywhere in the world. So it's not a US-based product. It is primarily an employer-driven product. When they send employees to other countries, or they bring employees from other countries into the US, we cover people anywhere in the world, no matter where they go. So we have clients that are mining diamonds in Kenya, and they have a employee who maybe has a unfortunate health incident in a remote jungle. We will fly a helicopter in there, pick them up, and bring them to a hospital where they can be cared for. So it's global care at its true definition, and that's the niche department that I work in. Keeps things exciting. For me, we get invoices every language, from every country. So it's not your kind of standard US-based health insurer. It's a very different, very dynamic environment, which keeps things exciting for me. But again, what you take away from this slide is size. It's big company, and there's a lot that we have going for us. But oftentimes, sometimes creativity can get lost in this type of an environment, specifically insurance. Like by design, we are a risk-averse business. That's what we do. We manage risk. That's our business. So sometimes it can be challenging to think differently and to get leaders to think differently. So what I want to talk about today is how you, maybe as an individual, can break through some of those barriers in your own business. Maybe they don't exist, and maybe it's a little bit more of a creative environment. These tips will still help you to think a little bit like an entrepreneur, even though you're not starting your own business. I always like to say, you don't have to start your own business to think like an entrepreneur thinks. So the term that's kind of academically accepted for entrepreneur within an existing business is this term intrapreneur. So I wanted to just level set on that definition so we can talk through it together. Oxford says it's a manager within a company who promotes innovative product development and marketing. I don't like this definition, right? First, it starts with a manager. So it's saying like you have to be a manager to be an entrepreneur. It also says it's an individual who promotes innovative product development. It's like, okay, it's a manager that walks around the business and just promotes the idea of thinking creatively. I don't like that definition. Wikipedia says it's the act of behaving like an entrepreneur while working within a large organization, a corporate management style that integrates risk-taking and innovation approaches. I like this one better, the act of behaving like an entrepreneur, right? It's like who you are, it's just things you do. It's not necessarily a job title. I don't like corporate management style, right? It's not really a management style to be an entrepreneur, in my opinion. Investopedia says, an employee who is tasked with developing an innovative idea or project within a company, the entrepreneur may not face the outsized risks or reap the outsized rewards of an entrepreneur. However, the entrepreneur has access to resources and capabilities of an established company. I like this one a little better. If we're getting a little closer. I don't like an employee who is tasked. That makes it sound like you have to be told to be a creative thinker, or someone has to come to you and tell you, Dave, I'd like you to be an entrepreneur today. Right? I don't think it's a job title or something someone tells you to do. It's just who you are and what you espouse. I do like the part, though, about you're not having the same risk reward as an entrepreneur, right? You're not going to go public with the idea you had within your company that's already public, right? You're not going to have that huge sell-off moment, but you do have the backing of an established company to help compete with those startups that maybe are less resourced than you are. Forbes says, entrepreneurs are innovative thinkers who use the combined power of creative problem solving and risk tolerance when they approach business challenges. But unlike entrepreneurs who launch startups to meet customer market needs, entrepreneurs are employees in existing companies who develop projects and explore new ideas using an entrepreneurial mindset. This is my favorite, right? Innovative thinkers that understand risk. When you're in an existing business, you have to understand risk, but can still use creative problem solving to tackle business challenges. And I really love the last part, explore new ideas using an entrepreneurial mindset. Right? That's what it's all about for me. It's not a job title. It's not something someone tells you to do. It's something you deploy. It's a tool set of creative thinking, of ways to think big but test small. All the ideas of lean startup and kind of build, measure, learn, all of those things that are academic, entrepreneurial ideas can be applied as an entrepreneur within your business. So I like to think of it as a mindset, not as a job title. So for me, Forbes gets it right on this one, but it does go to show you, don't just trust Google's top definition that they throw at you. It's like, this is the definition of the term you just searched. Dig a little deeper, you might find something a little bit more insightful. But I think this helps us to now talk about this idea that I've developed around the entrepreneur's ecosystem. And it's really about, as an entrepreneur, what are the forces in your environment that you need to understand and you need to control or seek to control or work within or around. You know, it's kind of like market forces act on a business. As an entrepreneur, you're within a business, within a market, and you have forces and things that are pushing and pulling on you that you need to understand in order to be successful. So I break these things down into 3 categories. Things you own, things you influence, and things you can't change. And all 3 of these in my book are equally as important. I'll start with things you own, and we'll work on from there. I'm going to talk through each of these individually, and then we're going to try to use this as an example of what I've done with this idea. So things you own. These are things that, you know, as a manager of a team or supervisor of a team or as a member of a team, that you have direct influence over, things that you can directly control. The first of those is ideation, right? Coming up with ideas. Where do you want to go after? What do you want to tackle? What's your next opportunity? You have control over that. Specifically in my role, my boss tells me, you go after whatever you want to go after, Dave. She empowers and enables me to say, you know, she expects me to deliver results. But what I go after and what I deliver is up to me. If you go out to a lot of corporate types and ask them where they get their information from, they're typically going to tell you they get it from their business intelligence team, and they get a bunch of reports, and they do the pivot tables, and they get the trends, and they go attack. Or they're going to tell you that they look at their customer surveys, and they dig into customer verbatims on their surveys. Data is great, but when you go and pull your own reporting, your data is already biased by the fact that you've requested it. Right? You have assumptions that you've baked into what you want to see. You also have ideas in your head, whether you like to admit it or not, that you think you already know the answer that the data is going to show you. So it's a bit skewed to you and what your preferences are. Surveys are similar. If a customer is answering a survey question to a company, it's a lot like the difference between giving someone advice to their face or telling a friend about what you think about that person. You're biased by the fact that you're giving direct advice or direct feedback to an individual or a department. Customers might think, like, I don't want to be really negative because they're going to go to that employee and they're going to yell at that employee, or I might get someone fired, or, you know, there's consequences to giving direct feedback that bias a customer's response. So what I like to do in my recommendation and ideation is, I call it, get your head above the clouds. Try to see outside your box, above the clouds, outside of your company. What I like to do, I like to go to like the App Store and look up Cigna's applications, look up our competitors' applications, and start reading what customers are saying unsolicited to a community of reviewers rather than to a company directly. They tend to be more honest. It's a lot like when you look at Amazon reviews. They're not talking to the company that created the product. They're most often talking to other potential customers. Like, don't waste your money on this product. They're not telling the business not to waste money on their own product. They're telling other potential customers what they truly feel and think about that product. So I find unsolicited third-party reviews to be much better than customer surveys that you yourself solicited after interaction with your company. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to think of, what am I going to go after? Where are my opportunities to improve? Try to get yourself above the clouds, outside your box, whatever term you want to use to describe that. Try to get outside your zone a little bit and find sources that are maybe different than what you typically are used to looking at. One other place I like to go is what I call third-party partners. So maybe other companies that work within your space but aren't necessarily a direct competitor. Maybe they're web firms or data analytics firms that provide services and support to businesses that are a lot like yours. And just approach them. I need a partner to help me with this project. What can you offer? They'll freely give you all of the new and fancy things that they can do. And that will tell you a lot about what other people in your industry or your area are asking for, what customers want to see. And it'll help give you some insights into what's going on in your marketplace, or maybe what problems other people are trying to solve as well. So the big tip with ideation, try to think differently if you want to come out with some different results. Second thing you own is your budget. Now, I don't own Cigna's budget. I wish I owned Cigna's budget. I have a lot of money to do a lot of things, but I don't. I just own my budget, my local budget, what I call piggy bank. So the amount of money that I have to run my portion of the business. And because I own that, I can be creative. I can do different things. I could find funds to help me perhaps run a pilot project that I don't have to go asking for funding for. This is kind of like the Intrapreneur's equivalent to bootstrap funding or asking your friends and family for money to start your business. It's called self-funding. So I take my budget and I find a way to get some money to do something. A good example might be, let's say I do $50,000 a month in overtime expenses in my business. And I need $50,000 to fund this pilot that I want to run, but I don't want to go asking leadership for it just yet because it's not ready. So I'm going to go out to my teams and I'm going to say I need everybody to cut their overtime by half for the next 2 months. And by doing so, I've now saved $25,000 per month, and I've accumulated $50,000 that I can go and spend on a small pilot project or maybe a third party to come in and help me build an application. Because it's within my budget and I've saved money by being creative, I can go self-fund this activity, and I don't have to ask my boss for money. There's one thing your boss doesn't want to hear, it's you asking for money, particularly for something that you haven't tested yet. And that's the whole idea here, right? Get creative with your local budget. Maybe you're not a manager or supervisor with your own budget, but you work for someone who has control over their local budget. Pitch this idea, pitch a couple of potential creative ways to maybe make some money available. You don't have to directly control your budget, but just need to talk to some folks that do and find creative ways to get some funding for your test. The other way is find ways to test without needing funding. That's another creative solution too, if you're talking on a really small scale. But so let's say now I have my idea, I've established my budget using some creative means. Now, the other thing I own is testing, new product testing, right? I need to show in a verifiable way that my big idea works on a small scale, right? So I've now come up with my idea, and I'm going to design a test. In the Cigna world, we call them pilots. Everybody loves pilots, pilot programs. So it's all about taking your idea and applying it on a small, risk-averse scale in a tiny portion of your overall business to prove out that your idea actually works and produces results. You take the money you found, and maybe you go to, like I said, a third party to develop a basic minimum viable product type application that you're going to use within your team to test out your theory. And make it controlled, make it measurable, and stay very close to it. Because you have a limited budget, you typically have a limited amount of time, and you don't want things to go wrong on you in your pilot phase. So if you pay very close attention to the things you own, come up with good ideas that are different, differentiated data sources, get creative with your budget so you don't have to ask for money, and come up with testing methodologies that really can give you good outputs, verifiable data. That's when you can take this information and move over to the blue section here around things that you influence. This is very similar in the entrepreneurial world. You're going to have a pitch deck, right? You are going to have your series of pitches that you would make to maybe like a venture capital firm in the entrepreneurial world, but you're instead going to make it to your business leaders, your boss's boss or his boss or her boss. You're going to go to the leaders that control things, and you are going to pitch exactly what you did in the space that you own. You're going to say, hey, I came up with this idea using these unique methods. I established a budget for myself by being creative, and I ran a test for X amount of months that produced these results. And when we extrapolate that across your bigger business, sir or ma'am, it is going to save you X amount of dollars over this period of time. It's a pitch just like a new business pitch, just like an entrepreneur would make when they're trying to get seed funding. You need to show you have a good idea, you need to show you put some skin in the game, and you need to show that it works before actually rolling it out. If you notice over here, there's only one line that you can actually influence. Because you really can't influence funding, and you really can't influence technology or what's built by your technology team. All you can hope to influence are your leaders. They hold the keys. They hold the purse. They need to be on your side, or you're not going to get strategic funding, and you're not going to get the IT department to change their ways. I can't go to IT and say, hey, it's Dave. I need you to stop what you're doing. I got a good idea, build me this website. Right? It's just not how it works in the existing business world. You have to find your way into the leadership circles to say, I have an idea that's really going to change things and is really going to boost the customer experience in a positive way. That's when your leaders will start influencing for you the pieces that you need to help grow your idea and make it a little bit bigger. And don't be disappointed if some leaders sometimes maybe latch on your idea, maybe they take it for their own a little bit, maybe they own it and start driving it. That's fine. That's kind of to be expected. That happens a lot. If you have leaders that are giving you no credit, though, that's a bad sign. But for the most part, you want to get your leaders to support you and get them passionate about what you're doing. The last piece here is the things you can't change, and these are almost as important as the things you own and influence. Your organizational structure, you can't change it. You can't give yourself a promotion to a higher level so that you have a bigger budget. You can't, change your boss. You can't change the power structure and how things are formed in your company. It's just not worth trying to go against the current in that way. Learn how to work within your organization. Don't try to change how it's set up. Legal, I cannot emphasize this point enough. You need to understand the legal risks and adhere to them. Entrepreneurs will often tell you, act now and ask for forgiveness later. And, they've applied that to something like Uber, right, where Uber just kind of ran fast and scaled and expanded like crazy. And then they started getting legal challenges by cities and states and countries about how they were unregulated. But by the time they were challenged, they had millions and millions of dollars to put all these lawyers on it and to go fight for them. You are in an existing business in this space, and you cannot put your existing business at risk or go afoul of legal regulations. It's a good way to sink your project from the start, and it's a good way to lose your job. So in difference with an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur, you can't ask for forgiveness later. You need to ask for legal approval now. If there's any question about what you're doing and its legality, you need to seek advice. This is a big guardrail you've got to make sure you have in place. I emphasize it because I work in healthcare in the United States, which is one of the most heavily regulated industries out there. We have a lot of rules that we have to follow, and it's really important that we're always doing it. The last piece, the world. Kind of seems stupid on here, but you can't change the world, right? You work for a business, that business has objectives, and your objectives should be to further those business objectives, right? If you feel like your business is not doing enough to be a positive corporate citizen, then you need to look for a new employer, right? If you don't agree with your business's position on social issues, then you should look elsewhere, right? But you can't get in and try to change the world. It's just not an effective approach. A good example would be like, hey, I have this great product idea. I think it's going to take a while in China, but all I need to do is change Chinese culture, and I think they'll start to accept it. It's not something you can influence. It's not something that you can change, and it's kind of a waste of energy to try to. So don't think too big. Don't try to solve world hunger. Make sure you're sticking to your business objectives. I'm lucky because Cigna does a lot of philanthropic work. They have a lot of great charities that they support, and there's plenty of opportunity for me to get engaged in that way. So I feel, that is good for me, and I feel comfortable with who I work for and all that stuff. But again, if you feel like your company's not up to any good, you should probably start looking for a new company. This is kind of what I've developed that I feel kind of does a good job of describing the world that an entrepreneur works in and maybe how you navigate it a little bit better. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just click into a case study and kind of how I have applied this. And it's an example of a problem that I faced that I tackled. But Carrie, I'm hoping for a time check a little bit on where, how much longer do we have to present? I'll make sure I'm...
Yeah, we have plenty of time. We have at least another 15, 20 minutes. We can go right up to the hour, and then people who have questions can stay on if you want.
Cool, excellent.
This is awesome, by the way. Did you come up with this, or is this something that Cigna had produced?
No, this is all Dave. This is all Dave.
Awesome.
Yeah, this was me getting my thoughts on paper, so it was interesting activity. sometimes seeing your brain written out can be scary, but this was a good experience. So I just want to walk through an example to try to make this real for you guys. So I'm going to talk about a problem that I was facing and a little bit about what I did to try to tackle it using this kind of entrepreneurial mindset. So the problem was, and this is really happening right now, that the market's putting a lot of pressure on price point. A lot of companies are looking at where can they save money. Affordability in my business is primarily achieved by using data to accomplish 3 objectives. Expanding networks, which provides Cigna with discounts, right? Relationships with providers mean Cigna gets a discount. Medical management, like making sure patients seek the right level of care. You know, that we're not going into the emergency room when I sprain my ankle, or I'm not going to the ER for a headache. And then fraud prevention, understanding when the data is showing things that are outside of statistical norms. Like, why is that dentist giving a crown to every employee of that company on Christmas Day, right? Like, that's something that you might not see in an individual claim, but when you look at bigger data, you can see those patterns that don't add up. So that's the primary way that I achieve affordability in my business, is using data to achieve those objectives. There's a lot of data startups that are starting to come into the healthcare space to show kind of analytic offerings that basically present a picture that says insurance companies are wasteful and that there's a lot of savings to happen. And so they're kind of showing themselves as disruptors, as a different way to approach healthcare is in, you know, kind of avoiding the whole insurance scene. So the goal here is to kind of head off that disruption and also to kind of get ahead of the headwinds that are happening with pressure on price point. We want to do that by implementing a way to capture more data in a scalable and affordable way to give ourselves those insights to help drive expense reductions for not only Cigna, but to pass those savings on to clients and customers of Cigna. Also, bonus, if I can capture more data, the thought is I can probably make my processes more efficient and more automated in some way to drive down my operating expense as well. So the challenge here is time. COVID-19, you know, put a big, tremendous revenue pressure on a lot of different businesses. Even if you made it through the pandemic unscathed, chances are you weren't completely unscathed. Your revenues were down in one way or another. You had to change what you were offering to adapt. A lot of businesses are saying they need to cut costs now to make up for a lot of that impact that has happened to them over the last year or so. We're seeing this across every industry. Unless you're Amazon or some of the tech firms that are more digital, Zoom, for example, you know, is a good example of a company that benefited from people staying at home all the time. But unless you're one of those companies, chances are you experience some downward pressure on your revenue. That's true in healthcare as well. So my problem right now is money, right? There's not exactly millions of dollars sitting around in the Cigna budget just waiting to give to Dave to go do something creative. So there's a lot of pressure internally as well on our budgets to make sure we stay in line, making these types of kind of creative ideas harder to sell. And knowledge, this type of data capture in my business, as I mentioned, many languages across all countries. There's no player out there that's really doing it to an efficient way. So this is the problem that I'm trying to tackle. How do I get more data in an efficient, effective way in this environment? So if I walk through the ecosystem we talked about, first was ideation. What I did to get at it was primarily third-party engagement. We did do a competitive analysis of the market, so what's out there, what are our competitors doing? But we went to third parties and just kind of said, hey, we'd like a partner to help us capture data. What do you offer? And we saw a lot of interesting things out there, the application of a lot of different technologies being used to try to pull off pieces of data from medical invoices without the need for an individual to sit there and look at it and type it in, right? So artificial intelligence, optical character recognition, a lot of these interesting startups have these really cool answers to trying to pull data off of forms. The best one I found was a company that basically does a crowdsourcing method for getting data, where they send a tiny snippet of a form to this huge community of people, and that community gets paid like a penny to enter just that little tiny piece of information that they get. And then the company collates all of the little pieces and they return you a solution. It costs you kind of pennies compared to dollars. It's really kind of interesting stuff. It showed us there's a lot of movement out there in terms of technology on getting data scraped off of PDF and images and into a usable data format. Then I started thinking about how am I going to pay for this, or how am I going to figure out how to fund this. And the idea that I came up with was kind of oxymoronically manual automation, right? I can't automate right now because it's going to cost me a lot of money. But I can deploy some resources to do what the automation would do, but in a manual way, just to kind of prove that if I had more data, I could gain something out of it. So I was able to take a set of resources that I had, a team that I had, and redeploy them as what we call rapid data entry. We train them to do this specific function of capturing data in a really rapid way, in a really accurate way, and to kind of duplicate what the automation would do. But instead of having to develop a lot of complicated technology, we just deployed a team to try to tackle this for us in a manual way. This was what we call efficiency funded. So because this team was capturing things and we're doing it really efficiently and they were passing it downstream, the efficiency of the teams improved. So because they were doing things faster, we needed to use less resources downstream to do the same activities. So it allowed me to say, I don't need to hire anybody to do this. The work they're doing pays for itself. So that's a little budget creativity there called efficiency funding. We then did a test over 60 days, really tightly focused on one small group of clients we had that we ran through this pilot. And we were able to generate insights of 60 days prior and how the data showed affordability opportunities, and 60 days after the pilot to show how the enhanced data could show us different opportunities. We were able to develop a detailed cost-benefit analysis, right? A comparison of how much we need to spend versus what we're going to get out of it. We went to our leaders with a pitch deck. We showed them over time what their gains could be, and we drew a roadmap of how this might work. What monies would be needed at various points to push various gains over time. They liked it. It was kind of like a little internal Shark Tank. You know, I love those types of meetings. And they were able to, they approved us and gave us some what we call seed money grants. You know, so they gave us some funding to go out and prove it. You know, you have a finite timeline. We want you to scale and see if you could prove. And we're only going to scale, rather, if you can prove out your idea. We were able to take that grant money and partner with Amazon Web Services, which was kind of they're on the forefront of a lot of this technology. And really what we're finding is, beyond our hopes, it's expanding our capabilities to do things we didn't really think were even part of this pilot. So it's really giving us a big look into the art of the possible in the future. So the outcome of this, we were able to prove out with our available resources that the idea was viable, that this big, crazy, innovative idea of artificial intelligence to capture data was a viable option using a small-scale, self-funded pilot. Pilot showed positive results, and we were able to convince leadership that this is what they needed to do, and they funded our limited expansion. We're actually going live with the full product the end of this year, so we're kind of in the expansion phase right now, and it's good, exciting stuff. And what we've learned is there's so much more opportunity in this space for us as a business that we're going to dig into as we continue to push forward. So it was an exciting project that's really just beginning, but the thing I want you to take away is it's that initial learning and piloting and testing and tinkering that gets you to a place where you're confident to sit in front of leadership and say, I don't think this can work. I know this can work because I've shown it can work in a small scale. So I want to talk real briefly now to wrap up just on 5 things that I think if you take away and do in your own business or your own work life, can really help you be a little bit more entrepreneurial within your workplace. These are things anyone can do and take away tomorrow and start changing your approach a little bit. The first is be a creative, resourceful problem solver. I recommend to all my teams that they read De Bono's 6 Thinking Hats. If you haven't read it already, it's a great little book about how to approach problems from multiple angles and how to think differently about the same problem. I've actually adapted this into a little slide deck that I give to my team, and I say, don't even come to me with a problem unless you've gone through this process first. It's about understanding, I need to know the data to understand the problem. I need to brainstorm possible solutions and present a recommendation rather than just complaining about a problem. But your boss will like you 10 times better if you go to them with problems, data, and recommended solutions rather than just going to them with problems, right? So it's a great book. I highly recommend it. The second, know your environment, right? Build a good network within your business and understand the informal power structures of your company, right? Everybody knows the formal ones, CEO, your boss, their boss, but the informal ones are almost equally as important. The people that get things done, right? Who's that guy in IT that you need to knock on their door when you need something done? Or who's that person in the data area that you can nudge when your request seems to be slowing down? What kind of beer do they like? Can I mail them a 6-pack, right? Or, things about how do you get people that are the people that get things done to help you out. It's very important. The other important thing here is if you're new to your company, probably not a good time for you to start trying to change the business from within. Really got to get to know your environment, know your network, know your structure before you start trying to change things. If you start a job and try to change things right away, you're probably not going to make a whole lot of friends very fast. So just a thought there. The third, be driven by passion but guided by data, right? Your passion is great, your idea is fantastic, and push yourself to hit it. But when the data is telling you maybe it's not working, or maybe you need to pivot, or maybe you need to move to something else, listen to the data and follow it. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that started their big idea in a completely different place than where they ended up. And it's important to not lose sight of that. Once customers start telling you that what you think is true is not true, you need to pivot and move to something different. So passion is good, but don't let it blind you. The fourth is think big, but prove small, right? Find a balance between those big ideas you have on how to do these huge, cool technology things, but prove them out in small, risk-controlled experiments, right? In your own team, in your own area, without putting the revenue of your business at risk. And the last one I'll throw out there is failing fast only works if you pivot fast, right? There's this whole entrepreneurs love to say that, fail fast, fail fast, fail fast. And as an entrepreneur, it's great. Maybe you fail on one thing and you can go get seed money and try something different, right? But if you keep failing fast at your job, you might not have a job for very long, right? What I always like to say is you need to fail fast so that you understand what doesn't work, but you need to correct fast. So be really on top of your pilot. Make sure as soon as things stray off course that you understand why that change is happening. The last thing you want is to go to your boss and say, listen, I tried this experiment. It got out of hand. I didn't rein it back in. And now we're 3 months behind and I need money to catch up. And that's the last thing you want to approach your boss about. So failing fast is fine, but only if you recognize when things are going off the rails and you correct fast. So these are 5 things I think that you all can go and apply right away, some stuff that has helped me. And that's really what I had to go over today. This was really a really cool opportunity. I'm so excited that I was able to talk to folks here today about this, something that I'm passionate about. I hope this was valuable to you guys, and I'd love to take on any questions or anything you guys have to talk about with the time we have left.
Great, thank you so much. That was not only interesting but also very engaging. I kind of want you to teach for us now, so we'll have to stay in touch. I'm gonna unpin you so that people can see, or maybe I took the spotlight off, but someone chat me if you want me to put it back on. So who's got questions? You can feel free to raise your hand. And I think we have one in the chat here. Josh, do you mind unmuting and saying your question? Or would you like me to ask it for you?
I'll be happy to ask it. Thanks, Carrie, and thanks, David. Great presentation. Just wondering if you had a favorite book on entrepreneurship. I don't know whether there's anything such as best practices, but or even per se on entrepreneurship tactics. But any good reads on that?
I'm looking at what books I have behind me here. I don't think I have it, but there's so the business model canvas is really the foundation of kind of entrepreneurial thought and how to think clearly about starting new business, starting new ventures. And Business Model Generation is a book out there that just does a great job of walking you through the canvas, how to think about, you know, the influences of the market on your potential business idea, how to think about revenues and cost structures, and just kind of getting yourself in tune to that business model canvas for me has been insightful, not just for entrepreneurial stuff, but just thinking about business problems in general. So I would recommend it. It's I'll get it to Carrie to send it out to the group, the exact book, but it's Business Model Generation, and it really is an excellent review of just a canvas and the things you need to know when you start thinking about heading in that direction.
Great. Thank you, David.
And I did just put that link in the chat for people. Small Biz Philly, I think that's Nathan, I want to say. Do you want to ask your question, Nathan?
Yeah, sure. How can someone that's looking for an investor find one and get access to capital for their startup idea?
So the question was, how do I find an investor if I'm looking for capital?
Yeah, for your idea.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of kind of venture firms out there. You know, it depends on your geographical area. It depends on your, you know, the type of business you're looking to go after. A simple Google search about, hey, I'm in this area, starting this type of business will give you some results. I know, you know, the Philly area, Robinhood Ventures, a lot of different cool things. If you're going to Temple in the IME, your professor is a great place. I used to love asking my professors where they got their venture money because a lot of them started their own businesses. Ask your mentors, all sorts of things. But I think the key message that I would say is if your idea is just an idea, you need to start first with kind of bootstrap or friends and family funding, right? So if you have an idea that you think is great, you need to test it first. And whether that means, you know, creating kind of a smokescreen website to gain some customer traffic and ask them questions and see if they're willing to spend money, or if it's like setting up a stand in a pop-up stand outside a mall and try to sell your product and see what customers are telling you. Or maybe it's going to all your family and saying, hey, you know, you want to give me $1,000 each? I'm going to go try to start this cool, you know, fast casual restaurant idea that I had. So if you haven't yet tried it on a local scale in a test small environment, I wouldn't go to ventures just yet. They're going to ask you for that. They're going to want to know, do you have skin in the game? Like, did you put any money up yet? You know, how much do you have? Or what are you at risk already? Or how deep are you? And if you say nothing, I just have a great idea, they're probably going to tell you to go do that first.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, great advice. Other questions? I'm going to ask one, and then we can see if people have more. David, you're a leader, so you have a budget, you have control. As you said, you have those things that you have control over. What if you're just an employee and you don't have control? How do you manage up, or how do you get your boss to, see the importance of something like this? What do employees come to you and with ideas, and what's convincing to you as a boss to invest in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, I have kind of two types of employees, and I kind of talked about it, two types of team members. I have some that come to you with problems, and they want you to solve them. Dave, I got this problem, I have this client in there, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I have to try to figure out what the problem is and how we're going to solve it. And then you have employees that come to you and say, listen, Dave, I have this problem. I've done the research. I went and got data, and I pulled in some trending. We did some analysis. We figured out these are the root causes. And I think if we were to do this, that, or the other, it would have this impact on this problem. Or even better yet, I tested this out, and I went and tried with a couple customers this approach, and they reacted really positively towards it. Or, hey, we threw this at the client and said, what do you think? And they really thought it was a good idea. So I think for me, It's going to your boss with solutions, or at least recommended solutions, and a little bit of context and history that shows you dug in. You didn't just come to them. You dug in and tried to solve the problem yourself. That goes a long, long way to get your boss to say, okay, this is something serious. There's potential here. The last thing I would mention is you need to sell it. Like, it took me so long to learn this. Like, I always felt like I just work really hard, I'm going to get noticed and I'm going to move up the ladder, and that might be true, but you have to be shameless salesmen of yourself and your ideas, even within an existing business. So like whenever you're meeting with your boss about asking them to do something, treat it like you're pitching a venture on your new business idea, right? Here's the why, here's the what, here's the cost, and here's the benefit, and I'm selling this as an idea. So those would be my two pieces of advice. Don't go with problems, go with potential solutions, and sell it like you're selling yourself.
Awesome, thank you. It looks like we got a couple more questions. Josh, go ahead.
My question is about the innovation management and entrepreneurship degree and your time at Temple. First, I wanted to if you how the IME played a role in your professional development, and also if you can relate something that you learned directly from the IME program that you applied in your professional career.
Yeah, so when I finished the IME degree, it was my intent to go start a business. Like that's where my heart is, and that's what I want to do. But I instead decided to have 2 kids and move to California and, get married, and, I did some other things that made me a little bit busier. And one thing I learned directly from this degree is starting a business takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. And you have to be focused on one thing alone. And if you're married with kids, you need a spouse that supports that and is willing to help you through that and be a partner in that. And I do, and we're planning on, once we get into a better place with kids getting a little older, we are going to do that. We're going to start a business. But what I learned the most is that academically, these ideas are not exclusive to starting a business. Specifically the idea around kind of lean startup, which is taught a lot in the IME degree. The idea that you need to build a minimum viable product that you can get to the market and get customers to react to it, rather than building this huge, big, fancy thing only to find out that nobody wants it or needs it, right? Build something stupidly simple and bring it to a customer to hear. And maybe they're not going to like it, but they're going to tell you why, and then you can change it and you can tweak it. So that's the biggest thing that I learned in IME that I apply to my job, is this idea of creating a minimum viable product. And so like in my business, I'll create just a small process change, and then I'll see how that process change is working. We'll generate feedback from customers, and we'll talk to people about how is that working for you. And they'll say, it's not working at all, Dave. It's terrible. It's worse than before. Oh, okay. Then I course correct. We move it a little bit back. And then we ask again, how's that working for you? What is that? How's that? And that idea of kind of build, measure, learn is a huge push in the entrepreneurial space. Build something quick, measure the outputs from customers and learn from it, and go build something else differently. So I took that and applied it directly to my job almost right away. And it really, I think, is my biggest takeaway from the IME. But what I loved about that degree was the professors are so knowledgeable, and so many of them started their own businesses. They knew how to go through the venture funding phases. They had, some of them are venture capitalists. Some of the professors, Professor Weber's actually, I had 2 of them. They're both great. They know their stuff so well. That's what I love the most about the degree. The professors are such a wealth of knowledge in new business and new venture creation. It was a great degree.
Great, awesome. Ryan, go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. So this is I am also an IME student right now. I can relate to a lot of what you said. So I echo everything that you just said about the IME program. But one question I have, and this has come up in a number of courses and things, is there seems to be, when you're disrupting your business from within, at times it's with a lot of big businesses too, that there can be tensions from other departments, especially if your department or a certain department is receiving more funding or more support for innovation, and those other departments are, look at it as, why aren't we getting that funding? Why are they, special, et cetera? How would you go about managing those perceptions from those departments or working with those departments to kind of reduce those tensions?
Yeah, Brian, that's an excellent question. And, you have this weird thing in internal business where they're your partners. You're working for the same team. You have the same goals. But at the same time, they're kind of your competitors because you're competing for the same resources, You're competing sometimes for the same promotion, right? There's all these weird dynamics at play where you're kind of competing with the people that work around you, but they're your colleagues, they're your team members. The way that I try to approach that is by engaging, like aggressively engaging your peers in other areas and getting them involved, right? So like, hey, like I work in claim, I'll go to the contact center and say, hey guys, we're working on this initiative. I want you involved from the start because you're such a critical partner in this, and get them engaged in your project and even make them part owner, put a little humbleness into it, give away a little bit and say, hey, I want you to run point on me 50-50 in this. And it'll help not only bring them along with you, but also will help when leaders see that partnership. They're going to want to push harder on your initiative. As more people are involved, it's hitting more areas. So, it's a great question. It's something that's very hard to master, and you'll never get it perfect. But I've found engaging with people and trying to pull them into your efforts is the best way to make them, proponents of what you're doing rather than opponents of what you're doing. Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Well, that's great advice. Any other last questions? Yeah, Joey, go ahead.
Well, first off, thank you, Dave, for attending this. I would reiterate the same thing Carrie said. It was a very engaging presentation. I have a bit of a silly question. So I'm trying to think of the best way to think about this. I'm an entrepreneur. As you can see behind me, I have tropical trees. So I'm in the Dominican Republic. I am trying to work as an intrapreneur in a freelance manner by providing virtual reality tours for specific real estate companies that nobody is doing in the country here. So I guess what my question would be is, how do you look at those types of interactions where you're working with someone that's technically an entrepreneur, but I'm trying to act as an intrapreneur for the companies? Does that make sense?
So help me frame that a little bit more. So you're saying that you currently work for a company and you're trying to be entrepreneurial and do freelance outside of that company to get people to look at you, or are you working on behalf of your company to do that?
I am working as a sole business owner here, but I'm trying to create value for the real estate companies here by offering a service without it being a service-based fee. So creating relationships based off of the networking, from there establishing the relationship so that I can be that intrapreneur within their business, even though I'm an outside entity.
Yeah, and I mean, it really sounds like it's more entrepreneurial than intrapreneurial, right? I mean, and you're really attacking it by saying, I want to deliver value to you by offering you something you don't currently have. So I think for me, it would be looking at your business model and trying to figure out what your engagement model is. How are you engaging with those companies? How are you showing them value? How are you making it easy on them? I mean, that's going to be your key driver of success. How are you engaging them? How do you get leads? How do you get companies to believe you? How do you show them what you're made of, right? Engagement, I think, in your area is going to be critical. But it sounds like you're straight up entrepreneurial, right? You may be entrepreneurial in the sense that you're trying to change their mindset a little bit about how they run their business. But I think that's straight up entrepreneurial. But I really like the idea. And I think the key, again, how are you engaging them? What's your platform, right? Is it just digital? Are you just engaging through a website? Or are you cold calling these companies and throwing this idea at them? Or do you have email campaigns, right? The engagement model, I think, is going to be key for you to figure out how you gain customers and how you show them value. Like maybe you're offering free stuff. Hey, I'm doing this for free for a little while, just so you see that it's like, this is really going to help you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. And I was going to ask you if that background is real or if it's, you know, on the fake one, but it sounds real. I like it.
Nice. Okay, wonderful. Well, it's 3:02, so this concludes